Good morning and welcome back to F3, the Future of Freight Festival here in Chattanooga at the Chattanooga Convention Center. I am John Kingston. I'm the editor-at-large at FreightWaves. And with me today is Chad Eichelberg. He is the president of Reliance Partners. Reliance Partners, excuse me. We're going to talk about something that is very much on the agenda here at F3, which is fraud. And I was thinking about it, Chad, and you know, the first bad thing that a human being ever did was when Eve ate the apple. That was a long time ago. So fraud isn't exactly new. What's happened that this has exploded? I remember being at the TIA annual meeting a couple of years ago, and it was described as the biggest problem that had beset the brokerage industry in years. Where did it come from that it suddenly has been such a problem?
Well, I think we've always been aware of, what's termed straight theft, where somebody targets a load that's high value at a truck stop or a high risk area. That's been common, and you have these rings, and it's the typical suspects, whether it's Southern California, Dallas, Houston, Memphis, Miami, Atlanta. You knew the markets where this would generally happen. And I think what's happened is these bad actors overseas have now discovered that this industry, there's a lot of high value freight to steal. You can do this over the phone. The number of scams and the sophistication that has gone into this, it's like nothing we've ever seen. The losses we're seeing from freight brokers and now even motor carriers attributed to this, it's just skyrocketed, and everybody's figured out, hey, voice over IP, I can be in Eastern Europe, I can be in Asia, I can be anywhere in the world and commit this crime, and it's rampant right now. It's out of control.
I mean, let's note that in the movie Goodfellas, one of their main illegal activities was hijacking trucks. This is a lot more sophisticated than that.
Yeah, and we see the hijacking, that's more common, that's more akin to how you lose freight in Mexico, but in this situation, all you need is a phone and a computer and maybe even some stolen driver information, but we're seeing these constantly changing. We're now seeing as recent as the past couple of weeks, we're aware of several instances where you're now seeing not only are they going after directly the freight broker, we're now seeing in this agent model environment that a new scam is that they go and sign up as an agent for a freight broker or as an employee for a freight broker and fake the credit app, fake the loads, turn around and at the same time go and sign on with multiple motor carriers as an owner-operator. And whether and these are small motor carriers they sign on with, and so suddenly you have the environment. You can go and create a fake load, you can have a fake customer, you can assign a fake carrier, and the whole flow through from making the commission as a freight broker, from being paid by the motor carrier, and this generally pulls in factoring companies as well. And we're seeing these every month. There's a new one, and this is now the latest and greatest. And we've got several folks that have lost in the hundreds of thousands, and a couple even appear to be in excess of a couple $1 million. So the sophistication and the way these scams continue to change and adjust daily, it's incredible in a bad way.
And it certainly has gotten a lot of attention here at FreightWaves. We're going to be starting an initiative with a newsletter about fraud. What is Reliance Partners' role in fighting fraud, besides just paying claims, which I know you'd prefer not to do?
Well, so we're not the actual underwriter, so we're an intermediary. And so from our perspective, obviously, we want to see the freight brokers and the motor carriers that we support, not have to deal with these types of things, because one, if you're purchasing primary cargo insurance and, suddenly you're missing 40, 50 loads, it could be pilferage, it could be whatever, but it creates a big strain, and the ability to actually insure freight brokers for cargo loss is coming more and more into question now as we see these losses add up, and you're going to see dramatically reduced cargo coverage forms. And so we're trying to go and educate both our customers and other prospective customers on the risks that's out there, and also make sure that they're properly insured and they're working with an appropriate monitoring service, which there are several great ones that are out there.
So who is the onus on here? Is it on the broker, or is it on the shipper or the carrier to do more due diligence to improve their internal controls?
Well, I think currently the onus is on the freight brokers, but shippers have a major stake in this. And I was speaking a couple of weeks ago in Texas on this topic, and shippers, specifically around pilferage is one area that we're seeing more and more pilferage claims. And these typically have been happening over 45, 60-day period. The motor carriers in the past have ran the lanes. They know what's they know who's going to be on those trucks. And in essence, they go and offload them at a third-party site, leave a couple pallets, reprint a new bill of lading, shipper accepts it, and that happens for 2 months until the shipper realizes they have no product. And if there was more transparency, more visibility there, certainly that helps tip off the freight broker that there's a scam unfolding. And we've even got scenarios that we may insure the motor carrier and the freight broker, and they're pointing fingers at each other. And oftentimes what it means is the motor carrier had their identity stolen. But it's tough sometimes to even ascertain, like, who's the victim here? Are they both the victim? You're seeing all these twists and turns now.
Yeah, you used the term pilferage, which I thought was a little confused by, because I just always thought of pilferage as theft. But the way you've spoken about it, it sounds like kind of a unique type of fraud. What's the difference between somebody just stealing a truck and what you call pilferage?
Well, pilferage, the driver is in on the actual scam. The motor carriers, or a lot of times it's a group of motor carriers that operate very above board for a period of time, so they kind of infiltrate everyone's network, and then suddenly when they flip the switch, it's okay, we're going after this lane, we know what's on them, these are TVs, or these are this commodity, and we're going to go and pilfer the load. So we're going to offload most of the pallets, we're going to leave 1 or 2 pallets on there, print a new bill of lading, deliver it, get paid, turn around and sell what they stole, and do it as long as they can remain in the network. And then suddenly when they realize they've been uncovered, they discard those MCs and move on to the next ones.
Are you finding that there's a particular type of freight that they like to target? This kind of, you always heard about people who stole things. They wanted a product to be able to fence rather quickly, like a television. Do they care now, or is there a market for almost everything?
There's a market for almost everything, and I think you've gone from a period of time that a thief would, steal a load, and maybe they're getting 10, 20 cents on the dollar for the value. We're now hearing them getting 60, 70 cents on the dollar. Food and beverage is obviously easily disposed of. That's always been a problem, but it's not specific to any one commodity. I mean, I can tell you the targeted commodities, energy drinks, solar panels, nut loads were really popular a few years ago, but there's not any one commodity. There's a market for pretty much everything.
Do you think that the brokerage community, because the brokerage community is gigantic,
Yeah.
A company like C.H. Robinson or a really big company like TQL, they're probably got all sorts of controls. Are you finding that the targets here tend to be the smaller brokerage companies?
No, I would say the targets are everyone. I can tell you we insure almost half of the top 100 freight brokers in the country today, and there are not very many that haven't been bit by this one way or another. Almost nobody is unimpacted, and everybody's impacted in terms of rising insurance cost. And so, I don't think size has anything necessarily to do with it. Maybe there are tighter controls in place, but there's more opportunity if you infiltrate a larger broker, because the volume in some of these lanes that suddenly they can pick exactly what they want, and they can do it repeatedly. And so they've got enough volume where a smaller broker, oftentimes they don't know what's on the shipment, they don't have these static lanes they can operate in. And so I think everybody's a target. There's no rhyme or reason.
When we were preparing for this, you said that Reliance was not really on the front line, in the sense that a company like Highway is really on the front line, and you were working to support them. So what are some of the major initiatives that are being done out there, a company like Highway, other companies that are maybe springing up to fight this? And then where do you see your role working with them?
Well, one of the things we're trying to do, and we're working with multiple carrier monitoring services that are out in the marketplace. One is, emphasizing, if I could tell you the number of losses we see, if you go and utilize, one of these third parties, follow it. Oftentimes when there's a loss, they're like, well, yeah, we had the ability to override that. We overrode them, or we had history with them, so we ignored the red flag. And for us, it's emphasizing you got to use them. We're working to create more insurance products that are contingent on utilizing one of these services. And for us, there's always going to be, and this is not going to go away. This is something we're going to deal with going forward in our space. And for us, we're trying to put the processes, procedures in place and work closely with these services to ensure that, the freight brokers out there are aware of what's happening. Our job more as an advocate in education and making sure that this issue is brought to where it needs to be, because some of the folks that have been impacted, millions of dollars in losses, and it's only going to grow. And if you don't do anything about it, you're going to turn around and you may owe a customer on a Pilfered scam. We've seen claims, north of $5 million, one specifically. And so that was all, and it was a smaller broker. So you're talking about the lifeblood of your company. If you get hit hard enough, you're not going to exist anymore. And many of these losses are very difficult to insure.
Have you been having some uncomfortable conversations with some of your customers about their internal controls?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot, and I think the deviations from the internal controls are where it's happened. But John, for example, you could be working with a freight broker and somebody calls you up and offers to pay you, $5,000 for your authority, and they'll pay you a little more if they can get your phone, your email, and all your logins. And so suddenly, too, it's very tough to detect when it goes from being John hauling their load to now somebody has purchased all of your credentials, and it's an illegitimate purchase, but they utilize that to go and pillage all of the relationships that you worked hard to build. You may or may not be aware that that's what they're trying to do, but we're trying to also educate our motor carriers that if you get a call like this can come back on you. Do not sell your authority via Venmo or PayPal or whatever. It's creating an outlet and a market for them to go and do this activity.
Are you finding that brokers are building internal fraud prevention groups in the same way that almost everybody has had to bring on cybersecurity experts to fight that problem?
Yeah.
Are they also having people increasingly dedicated to just looking at this problem all the time? And should they?
Yeah, absolutely. And we encourage people, and we've worked closely with some of our insurance markets as well, that, the importance of having a group assigned to high value goods as well. High value, they're going to be targeted more frequently than, a load of bottled water, but we're seeing everything stolen. There's nothing immune from being stolen. About the only thing I haven't seen stolen yet is maybe corrugated paper, but for the most part, everything has a market.
What has been the role of law enforcement here, or are they kind of late to wake up to this?
I think you have certain areas of the country, like the task force in Southern California is very well known. You've got a great group in Texas and in Georgia and Florida, different areas that have dedicated resources. The problem with this now is we're not seeing just loads stolen in, the hot spots that you would suspect like a Memphis. We're seeing them stolen in Montana, in Omaha, in, the Northeast, in areas that you would have never expected fraud to be committed before. So at this point, you've got a lot of law enforcement that's never even witnessed cargo theft. And oftentimes you call and they'll say, well, call where the load picked up, or call where the load delivered, or where you think it was. Everybody wants to pass the buck to somebody else. And I know law enforcement, the FBI is beginning to work more of these cases than they have before, because the amount of theft has risen so dramatically that they do view this as organized crime. So you are seeing the FBI's getting involved, and knowing contacts at your local field office, I would encourage everyone to do.
Do you have any kind of division about how much fraud do you think is being originated in the U.S. and how much is being originated abroad? I would imagine to make it work, even if you originated it from abroad, you've got to have some actors on your team here in the U.S. as well to kind of finish the job.
Yeah, in a lot of the cases you do. The goods have to go somewhere, but they have networks, and these organized groups are working with the local operations that have always existed to offload the goods. And, oftentimes, in Southern California, when it happens, that freight generally is going to flow right back across the border to be sold. A lot of the freight that's stolen in the Southeast is going to flow south to Miami, where it's going to be exported or it's going to be sold in black market. And so, I don't think anybody can even comprehend the amount. And I think there's probably a lot of undetected losses on the shipper side, where shippers are not aware even from an inventory standpoint, because we're seeing now that they're finding this, 45, 60 days after the fact. How many of these are they not finding? who doesn't have the sophistication in their supply chain to be able to track, goods that are being stolen or pilfered that you're not even aware of. There's probably so much more theft that has not even been documented.
Yeah, well, whenever I go into Manhattan and I see them selling gloves for $1, I don't assume that they got that way because they had really low production costs.
Sure.
Yeah. So this has been the first discussion of fraud here at F3 this year, and I assure you it will not be the last. But we do want to thank Chad Eichelberg, the president of Reliance Partners, which is based here in Chattanooga. I'm John Kingston, the editor-at-large at FreightWaves. We're going to have some more discussions. Stay with us.